Hello everybody, my name is Johan Wiklund. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship at Syracuse University in the US and also visiting professor here at Lund University. And today I'm going to talk to you about entrepreneurship and mental disorders. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to make the argument that mental disorders might actually be positively associated with entrepreneurship. First, let's look at what is a mental disorder. A mental disorder is essentially defined as a mental or behavioral anomaly that causes distress or disability. It's also something which is not socially normative. So what this means is essentially that you feel, think, or behave in ways that are different from most other people. And also, not being socially normative means that these are not appreciated by society. For example, you can behave different from other people that are really something that's viewed positively. If you're an outstanding athlete, for example, that's something which is different, but it's also socially normative and endorsed. But if you have a mental disorder, you behave or think or feel in ways that are not socially normative. So that's part of what it means. And the other part is it causes distress or disability for you as an individual. So it's something that's painful. The way I like to view people with mental disorders are that they are outliers. There are people that are different from the norm, different from most other people. Now, so why would I research entrepreneurship and mental disorders? Well, there are a number of reasons for this. And the first one is that there are actually a lot of anecdotal evidence that successful entrepreneurs have mental disorders. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group, for example, has been very open about the fact that he has dyslexia. Similar with David Neeleman, the founder and CEO of JetBlue, among other airlines. He's also been very open about his struggle with ADHD. We also have Ingvar Kamprad from IKEA, who had mental disorders. And if you look at somebody like Steve Jobs, although he never admitted to mental disorders, a lot of people would say that he shows a lot of signs of mental disorders, in particular narcissistic personality disorder. So that's one reason. It seems like there are successful entrepreneurs who have mental disorders. Now, my interest is in particular with ADHD, dyslexia, and autism spectrum disorder. And the other reason I think that these disorders might be particularly interesting is that recently a lot of books have been written about these disorders where they talk about the advantages of having these conditions. Like books with titles such as The Dyslexic Advantage or The ADHD Advantage have been published in recent years. So there are people that have started looking at maybe the positive side of these particular disorders. So that's the second reason. The third reason is that mental disorders actually affect a lot of people and have large implications. For example, 11% of the youths in the US have a formal diagnosis of ADHD, and probably a lot of people have the same symptoms, although they have never received a formal diagnosis. Also, for example, in Sweden, mental health is the largest reason for unemployment, and that's been shown that this hampers economic growth. So there are implications both for the individual and for society of these mental disorders that are far-reaching. And importantly, these numbers are increasing worldwide, and there are even people that suggest that the increased use of social media and so forth endorses and enhances these mental disorders. So this is something we can expect is going to grow even more in the future. So we know that these disorders can be highly dysfunctional. That's why they are disorders in the first place. We know that they can cause a lot of distress for the people who have them. Some examples are that people with mental disorders are much more likely to be involved in drugs, alcohol, suicide, underperformance in school, dropping out from school, unemployment, job turnover, and those kinds of problems. But I think it's important to realize that what's functional and what is dysfunctional is a matter of context. And I can use myself as an example. I'm 2 meters tall, 6'7" if you're in America, which means I'm very much taller than the average person, more than 2 standard deviations above the mean to be exact. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? Well, that actually depends on the context. If I'm at a concert, it's a great thing. I can see above the heads of everybody else. But if I'm in an airplane, it's not such a good thing because I'm going to be all crammed in my seat. So I think that's important to realize that what is functional, what is dysfunctional, what's good or bad is a matter of context. And for example, being as tall as I am, I have never ever had a comfortable chair. Chairs are typically designed for people that are closer to the mean, more normal, so to speak. They don't design furniture for people of my size simply because there are so few people that are as tall as I am. It's actually the same if you think about job design. Jobs are designed for people who are normal, who are close to the mean. Whereas if you are an outlier, if you have a mental disorder, and you're not like most other people, jobs are not designed to suit you. Now, for me to get a comfortable chair, I need to make my own chair to fit my own personal size. And it's the same thing with mental disorders and entrepreneurship. If you have a mental disorder, you can design your own job to fit your own special needs. And you can do that by starting your own business. So I have conducted several studies on this topic, the link between entrepreneurship and mental disorders. And what I found is that people with mental disorders are generally attracted to entrepreneurship. Why is that? Well, it's for the reasons I kind of alluded to before. People feel that they don't fit in the regular society. They find it hard to find a job that suits their special needs. So they feel that if they start their own business, they can actually capitalize on their strengths, and they feel that they can adapt their jobs to their own personal needs. We also find that people with ADHD specifically are more likely to start their own businesses. We have looked at a variety of groups of people in society, and we find the same findings across the board. And essentially, we're arguing that ADHD symptoms are particularly well suited for entrepreneurship. If you're going to start your own business, you have to accept uncertainty. You have to accept that you throw yourself into something new and unknown. Well, people with ADHD typically are more risk prone than other people, so it's something that suits them. Also, they typically have high work capacity because they are hyperactive, which means that they're able to work all the long hours you need to work if you run your own business. And also, people with ADHD typically have sleep disturbances, which means that they work at irregular hours and might sleep during the day. That can be very hard to fit in a regular job. Therefore, they're attracted to running their own business where they can adapt to their own personal needs. In my research, we also found that people with ADHD actually perform better than those people who don't have ADHD. And that's a very important finding because it shows that things that might otherwise be troubling for you, things that might otherwise be dysfunctional can actually be functional in entrepreneurship. And what we did find is that people with ADHD, they tend to be more entrepreneurial in their management. They tend to manage their firms in ways so they are more innovative, generate more new products. They take more risks. They're also more proactive in terms of introducing new goods and services before the competition. And those three characteristics help them perform better than the counterparts who don't have ADHD. So, what are some of the lessons that can be learned from this research about linking entrepreneurship and mental disorders? Well, first of all, I think it's very important to realize that entrepreneurs are not superhumans. Sometimes if you read newspapers or you watch TV, you're going to see people, you're going to find entrepreneurs portrayed as if they're something out of the ordinary, only having strength, no weaknesses. Our research shows that that's definitely not the case. People who are no superhumans, people who have clear weaknesses can actually excel in entrepreneurship. So that's one important lesson. And another lesson is that entrepreneurship can allow people that otherwise struggle in life to excel and flourish. If you have problems fitting in school or in work life, or if you have been diagnosed with a mental disorder, there is hope. You can actually find a context that suits you. I think the important thing is to understand your strengths and weaknesses, to understand that if you have a mental disorder, you will have certain weaknesses, but you could also have certain strengths, and it's important that you learn to capitalize on those. And realizing that you have weaknesses can actually be a strength if it's used appropriately. And I'm going to give you an example. Richard Branson, that I mentioned before, who has dyslexia and who's a founder of the Virgin Group, he early realized that he couldn't read, he couldn't write like his friends did, so he knew that he had to rely on other people in order to get through school. And this being able to and having to rely on other people in order to perform in school is something he took with him into his businesses later on. So he always has delegated a lot of decision making in his businesses, relying on the judgment of others. I also think it's important to realize that if you feel that you might have a mental disorders, there are several established tests that you can take. They're available online, so you can actually see whether you would qualify for one of these disorders, and then you could also seek out whether entrepreneurship is the right thing for you. I think it's important to realize that a wide variety of people start businesses, and they do so for a wide variety of their own personal reasons. And it's important to realize that just because you don't fit in school or you don't fit in the regular workplace doesn't mean that you can't succeed as an entrepreneur.